we must say we are honored and gobsmacked that not only are we sitting here today in front of a successful YouTuber, a published author, but also a person who is a contestant on the TV game show Legends of the Hidden Temple. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome everyone to episode 25 to the Ramble podcast.
Yes, welcome. Today is a very special episode. We have Andrew Givler here, known online as Sigils, who has a gaming channel on YouTube with over 1.2 million subscribers. He primarily plays Minecraft, but has also had Among Us videos, Fortnite videos, and a bunch of other games where he gives hilarious commentary, has a blast with his friends, and he's also a part of a group called The Regulars, where him and some YouTube buddies do some challenges, reactions, and lots more. But Andrew is not here today because of his Minecraft abilities, nor because his YouTube group that's suspiciously similar to the Sidemen. However, he is here today because he recently published a book called Soul Fraud. And Soul Fraud is a book that follows our protagonist, Matt, who has flunked out of college, lost most of his family in a tragic accident, and is in love with his best friend's fiance. So, when Dan the Demon comes and asks Matt to exchange his soul for 10 years of absolute bliss, Matt has every reason in the world to say yes. But Matt's seen this story play out before. He can't be tricked by a demon, so he says to the demon, "No, thank you." But Dan the Demon shortened his quota and forges Matt's name on the contract anyways, committing soul fraud, hence the name of the book. And this goes against the laws of the supernatural world. So it happens, and Matt's life starts getting really strange, and he needs to figure out how to get his soul back before it's too late. Now, Andrew, before we officially welcome you to the pod, we must say we are honored and gobsmacked that not only are we sitting here today in front of a successful YouTuber, a published author, but also a person who is a contestant on the TV game show Legends of the Hidden Temple. Welcome to the podcast.
You guys did your homework. Can I hire you guys to do intros for me from now on? Holy crap, I forgot about some of this stuff. Yeah.
Now, more importantly, did you keep the swag they gave you? Is that...
Yeah, I have the t-shirt.
Okay, you still got it.
I'll tell you what. Listen, respectfully to that TV show, they had no budget for anything that was happening in that season, so there wasn't there wasn't a lot of perks being handed out.
Yeah.
I do have the Red Jaguar T-shirt, so that was
I
the
gotta tell
win.
you, we were no disrespect, but very thankful you came out that you lost in the second round, so we didn't have to watch anymore.
We weren't allowed to win the second round, I'll say very quietly. Game shows are a fascinating experience, but yeah, there's some things that you don't see. I would never do a game show again, probably after doing that. It was a time.
I did notice you did do a game show on Alienware.
Okay, well, all right. Let me rephrase this. I wouldn't do a game show for free ever again.
Okay.
So game shows like TV reality game shows, they don't pay you because you have a chance to win. It's like against the law, apparently. But then the things are sort of set up where the house always wins, right? It's like gambling, right?
Sure.
So it was just the whole time. The Alienware game show, I'm partnered with them. Like, those are my friends. That was a great time. I would do that again in a heartbeat. But it was very different from like digital and like a brand running like a cool event that's supposed to be fun, and a TV show trying to make money. Two entirely different experiences.
Gotcha. So we got a little snippet there. So something happened where they didn't let you go on and get in second or first place. What's that all about?
There was an answer we gave at a question that they didn't show. And they said that we mispronounced the name of like whatever the mythological guy was, but we were pretty close. And they had told us in the briefing that they were gonna like work with people on that because like the legend that we were playing was like a legend none of us have ever heard of, right? Like a really, really obscure one, at least in like Western culture. And so really complex names that we heard for the first time. They don't give us a pre-brief. Like, we got told the myth like standing on the stairs, heard those names for the first time, and then had to be able to remember them. So it was just, they were like, listen, we know it's hard, no big deal. So we answered a question correctly, but like a vowel was off, kind of. And they
Jeopardy
decided
rules.
not to give it to us, and that would have let us win the round. And they just
Gotcha.
didn't show it in the edit. It doesn't appear.
Yep.
I personally saw when you guys were stamping your foot. I saw it where you guys stamped first, and yet theirs went off.
Yeah.
Like I saw that, and I was like, this is. Well,
That's harder for me to quantify, right? Because like I was there. I felt like we were pressing it first. It wasn't going through. You could have bias on that one, but like there was literally a question we answered that would have won the game that they didn't give to us. So it was, all
right.
It is what it is.
It would be so funny.
Whatever, I don't care.
Oh, we appreciate this insight. And this would just
I think
be
it got canceled
hilarious.
anyway, so
Oh, it was
Yeah.
canceled season 1, and it's on the CW.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This would be absolutely hilarious if the entire episode is just on Legends of the Hidden
Yeah,
Temple.
we just talk about that for like 2 hours or whatever. Yeah, no. It was cool to do. Like it felt very much like childhood moment. I was like, oh man. It also just, I don't know, so much was not what I expected. Like so one of my best friends and I were on it. And I don't know if you looked into her at all, but she's like a literal rock star, right? And we went through the auditions, and the auditions were so disjointed that they kept being surprised that we were like a YouTuber and a rock star duo. And so when we got put on the show, they didn't know that. They cast us as like the gamer friend group, and so like all of like the producers were always like, can you like relate this to video games? And we were like, not really. Like, what is this? And like everybody else on our episode was just like at normal 9-to-5s and stuff. Like we had a bunch of like guys who were like computer programmers and stuff, and then we just kept having this conversation like, so what do you do? And we'd both be like, so she's in a band, and they'd be like, oh, sick. And then like people had heard of it, and they're like, what are you doing here? And we're like, we're not sure.
I'm not exactly sure.
I don't know what's going on. It was a whole time. It was really fun. I learned that TV is a different beast than doing YouTube is really what it was.
Absolutely. And yeah, to start us off, we don't want to keep you on Legends of the Hidden Temple, so we'll get right into your book, we promise. So,
Please get me past my trauma.
yeah, let's get past that. So something that was really impressive to us is we saw a tweet you put out in the beginning of January 2021 that said essentially if you don't finish writing your book that year, that you'd see the year as a complete failure. And here you are now publishing the book in 2022. You actually accomplished your dream of becoming an author. How does that feel? Like, emotionally, how do you feel right now?
Okay, man, you guys did your research. I love this. I feel like it hasn't really set in on a lot of levels. Like it feels good. Don't get me wrong. Like I still get like at least a tweet a day of somebody being like, "Hey, your book just arrived. I'm excited to check it out." That feels awesome. But it really feels like also the beginning, if that makes sense. Publishing a book just makes me want to publish the second one faster. Like, which is probably also like what, the same thing I feel about YouTube is like, you don't really ever feel done, It just feels like a good step. So it's awesome to have done. I feel like I learned so much about the process. There were so many things that I was like caught off guard by or just didn't think about that I had to like learn on the fly. So I think I hope I can do the next one better and just keep building on it. But yeah, it feels good, but it also doesn't feel like much yet, I guess, if that makes sense.
That does. And this is going to be a trilogy, correct?
No, it'll be more than a trilogy.
Oh, wow.
Originally I was thinking that I wanted to do a book a year, like for the 10 years of the contract. But I think that may shift a little bit. I know where I want it to end. Like I know kind of like the big thing that's going on, but I'm kind of trying to leave myself a little bit of room to deal with the problems that are going to come up as he goes.
Okay.
So we'll see exactly, but it's gonna be a longer series.
So 5 to 10 range, most likely.
That's what I think.
Okay.
I can't imagine, some series really hit their stride and something opens up where it makes sense for it to go longer. So I don't feel like I'm comfortable enough saying it's absolutely going to be locked here, because if I find that thing, I want to be able to explore it. But that's like the vibe that I'm thinking right now.
Got it. Wow.
Wow, okay. Well, I wanted to ask you about this whole difference between your YouTube career and your book, where you started YouTube in 2012. It took you about over 6 years before you could make it into your career. And at one point you were like really close to quitting. and when your friend Biffle actually convinced you to stay. And your book, you talked about how this was a dream from childhood. It's been like this book's been over 5 years in the making. Which are you more proud of, your YouTube career or becoming an author?
Man, that's a hard question.
You got him. You got him. Nice job.
Yeah, just like whoops, right in there. On some levels, I think I might be a little more proud of the book.
Oh wow.
In different ways. I mean, I'm very proud of my YouTube career, but I feel like in terms of it's not quite as unique, I suppose. Right? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of YouTubers who have achieved the kind of things that I've pulled off and that sort of thing. Self-publishing is really still like an emerging thing. I actually sort of consider what I'm doing right now to be like the YouTube equivalent of book writing. But I feel like I'm a little bit earlier in that wave, so it's a bit more like, not a pioneer because I think it's already been pioneered, but I'm still sort of in that like early adoption and experiment part. So making YouTube videos, you know, I have a team that helps with that, and it's because they're smaller, it doesn't feel like as big of an accomplishment, even though the years and years and years I've been doing it is, versus like years that went into making one like very polished, completed thing rather than a daily thing. I think I'm a little more proud of it because of that. Like it felt harder to do.
Okay, wow.
But it's pretty close. You know, those are my two favorite things. I'll be honest.
That makes sense. So if you put years into making one particular YouTube video, you'd probably feel more proud of that particular video. And that this feels like one special thing, right?
Exactly. I mean, because, you know, at the end of the day, I do daily YouTube videos, right? You can only make them to a certain level of quality. Like I try to make them as great as possible, but there's only so many hours in the day. So they're very like different kind of things. One is the daily churn, and the other is like this is done and I have reached the point where like I'm happy with it and more or less and ready to go.
Oh wow,
Awesome.
Well, I wanted to ask you about because this has been a long time coming for you.
Yes, you got him.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like most kids actually, with their child, they want to become a fireman or an astronaut, or nowadays actually YouTubers like yourself. So what book or series did you read as a kid that inspired you to become an author?
Man.
Bonus points if any are behind us.
Dude, I mean, so many. I'm a huge reader. Like that, I read constantly, and I read very quickly. So ever since I was a child, I've just been like absorbing books. So I honestly can't really remember a period in time where I didn't want to be a writer. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, like being a YouTuber wasn't a thing, right? So I think the more common, like, I remember as a kid that author was actually one of the most desired jobs for kids my age. So I went from like the one most desired job to the other one, kind of, you know, through some sort of weird stroke. I guess I've just always been following trends. The Wheel of Time is like one of the most iconic to me. I absorbed that as a kid. I was on forums writing like fan fictions for Wheel of Time, like the role-playing forums and stuff like that, where you would like make characters and train them to be Aes Sedai and stuff like that. I also really loved like the old Star Wars Extended Universe. Michael Stackpole's Rogue Squadron series was incredible. I still love that to death. And then I started reading I read all of his fantasy. The Dark Glory War is an incredible book that gets slept on because I think it's like a prequel to the trilogy, and I don't love the trilogy as much, but the Dark Glory War was really, really cool, and was like an exposure to a first-person narrative, because first-person narrative was kind of considered sort of trashy when we were kids. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like it used to be very kind of like poo-pooed on by English teachers everywhere as the like lesser art form, you know, like extreme pulp, but now we accept pulp as pulp. So that was one of the first times I read a book where I was like, oh, you could write first-person and be clever. That's interesting.
It's a difficult position to actually write. I can name a few where it does it well, but
I agree.
Not that often.
I think, yeah, it's easier to do well. I actually found I struggled because I used to try to write third person more, and I found that I needed to have the thing I like about first person is, this is a tangent, but is that you can really dump a big personality onto the main character and kind of guide the story through his perspective. I found that I tended to make my third person narrator like not neutral enough, and then everybody just became snarky because it was like I didn't have a place to kind of bleed that off, and that's kind of what drew me to first person writing. I find third person way harder personally.
Oh, that's interesting.
one day maybe I'll try it again. We'll see. I may just be a first-person hack from now on. I think also one of the other big early influences, and I did this like backwards for most people, is I have this very vivid memory of one of my librarians gave me the first book of Codex Alera by Butcher. And I had never read Dresden, never heard of him. And I read Alera as it was coming out, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I didn't read Dresden for like another 10 years after. I thought it sounded really dumb. But Butcher was a heavy influence on me, like, you know, in my early teens, but for his like less popular series.
Gotcha.
Yeah, actually, Dresden Files is on my list, but one of the things that is my favorite series that I've read, fantasy-wise, is The Wheel of Time. So
Okay.
I'm a huge Wheel of Time nerd. I love the series.
I got an encyclopedic knowledge of Wheel of Time. I'm down.
Oh yeah, I've actually I read the whole series in about 2 months.
Solid.
Because
Okay.
My job allowed me to basically read 8 hours a day.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm
I
very
tore
jealous.
through it.
I
I'm
do
actually
highly.
getting Austin to read it.
Oh, you haven't read it yet? Oh, what are you doing?
He hasn't. I know.
It's so intimidating. It's a
It
lot of
is, but it's
time.
also for the most part worth it. There's only 1 or 2 books that make you want to die. And
Yeah, and hey, I imagine when you were reading it, was it still coming out
it was, yeah.
when you started? See, where I was able to blow through them, and so the slog books did not hit as hard because I could just go to the next one.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. I mean, to be fair, it was mostly done when I got it. I want to say, I think one of Jordan's might have come out, and then the 3 Sanderson, and that was it. So it wasn't that many. Like I got pretty deep. I got past the slog too, to the part where it was like, ooh, we're going places again. But
Yeah.
there are a couple books in there that while I love them, I don't know that I'll read again anytime soon. But
That's
Lord
fair.
of Chaos has one of my favorite scenes in fantasy of all time. Dumai's Wells is incredible. I remember reading that for the first time, losing my mind. I still go back and read that, just like that chapter every once in a while.
Well, we'll try and keep it spoiler free for my
What is
friend
going on?
here, Austin.
Yeah. That's why I said just
gonna
Dumai's
go into
Wells.
it.
That's it. Boom. You know, if you know, you know. Nothing else to be said.
Would you say Robert Jordan's your favorite author, or do you have a particular favorite?
Oh man. That's tricky, I guess, on how you quantify. I mean, Robert Jordan's one of my favorite storytellers. I don't know that he's my favorite writer in like a prose. His writing isn't particularly brilliant. I don't think it's good, but I would say there are other people who, like, if I'm just looking at like how they turn a phrase, I would rank higher than him. But as like as a storyteller, I would put him up very like in the top 5, 100%.
Got it. Okay.
Like
And
I'm trying to think. Like and I think an example would be Rothfuss. I think is a brilliant writer, right? Like I think that his turns of phrase are really, really good. He works a lot of like thematic stuff in. Like he'll kind of use like the same imagery about something as he's going through a paragraph, so you kind of have like this feel about what he's talking about that not a lot of people can do very well. So I give him like a lot of prose points that I might not give somebody else.
I completely agree. I actually don't particularly like The Name of the Wind.
Okay, I knew one of you didn't like Name of the Wind, so I was like, here we go.
You noticed the tension just get high. It's on your face.
But the thing I have to give it is the prose is beautiful. It has something that is really difficult is to write music, like write a song being played in a book.
Yes.
It almost always sounds weird. It just never
Or lame.
connects.
Yeah, 100%.
Patrick Rothfuss it's gorgeous.
Yes.
In many ways, it's maybe even better than Tolkien when he describes his poems.
Ooh.
Just how he
I agree.
how he weaves it in. He weaves it into the story on the emotions going through him, and it is beautiful.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Tolkien
And,
is,
hey-
I would put it like in the category of Jordan, where like I love Tolkien stories. Like the Lord of the Rings is the father of the genre in many ways. I don't love reading them though. It's evolved from then, like the editing and everything, and feels like reading a history book, and the history is awesome, but the actual like writing of it, some parts are brilliant and some parts I'm like, bro, I just don't, I don't care about the map anymore. Please stop talking about the map. I don't care. Which
I guess that's where we differ, because I really actually love the history kind of textbook of it. I don't know, it just always absorbed me into the story and the world. Because
That's
when I was
fair.
reading it, I felt absorbed.
I mean, he's one of the best to ever do that for sure. I think Jordan hit a little bit more of a middle ground where like I think his character's a little richer and there's more like things that happen while then also being like, and now here for a brief history of da 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 da. So I think I enjoyed reading Jordan a little bit more for that, but I mean Tolkien's a mess. Okay, I'm not trying to diss Tolkien before the pitchforks come out for anybody.
Slow down.
Just personally, like I feel like I wish I had Tolkien's knowledge when I'm writing something like his understanding of the world, and then written different, right? Like some of it I don't need to know. That just should be what the author knows, and then I want it to be revealed to me a little differently, personally.
Sure.
And not to give the wrong impression, but for Soul Fraud, I would say it's more toward YA and middle grade to YA, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter-esque urban fantasy, rather than your Wheel of Time, right? That's the target you're going for in a Soul Fraud is more toward YA than adult fantasy, would you say?
I really struggle to answer that question because I'm not sure. A parent actually left a review, which made me very happy because I don't feel like there's a good category for what I'm trying to do. But this parent was like the parent of a fan, and the kid loved my YouTube videos and knew his mom loved to read. So he was like, "Hey mom, you should check out Sigils' book because it came out and I think you might like it based on what you like." And so she kind of read it skeptically and then really enjoyed it. And then she had him read it. But she said basically the book is written for adults, but it's written in a way that kids can understand and with nuance so that if there is something that's more mature for the kid, they don't necessarily pick up on it, right? Like you kind of get what you get out of it. And I'm kind of trying to do that. Like I think it's written for adults, but it's not written for adults in a way that it's like explicit or aggressive or gratuitous for the sake of gratuity. I think that it's, I think it's a little older than like YA, some YA, but it's not like I wouldn't classify it as just an adult book. Like I say it's PG-13. That's what I say. Because I don't know that it quite perfectly fits either mold. And that's been you're welcome to my existential crisis.
Well, I actually was describing the age range. What from my thought process was it sits in the same age range as Red Rising. Red Rising is not. It's not a YA book at all, but it also doesn't have like that full grimdark feel. I think it's a good middle ground, and I would say Soul Fraud kind of falls into that age range.
That's definitely the vibe of what I'm trying to hit. I think to me, Dresden is also kind of like the bar for urban fantasy at this point. I think he's really pushed it to like where it can go, and I think he more or less does that too. So I was definitely trying to deliberately operate in that like Dresden, Res Rising, appropriate for all ages, but also interesting for all ages. Like the YA can sometimes, I love YA, but sometimes when I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, I'm in my 30s. Like I don't care about this anymore. Right. So I tried to make the problems that everybody can relate to and resonate with.
That makes sense. It should be mentioned the protagonist is in his 20s. So it's you typically, if it's a YA, have a protagonist in 16, 17 years old to relate more to that audience. So it makes perfect sense. You have an older character in their 20s, but the themes aren't super explicit, so it can be.
Well, he's also dealing with, he's in love with his best friend's fiance. That's typically not a
it's not a problem children have. Yeah.
No, but it's also not like a unimaginable thing, right? When you're 16 or 17, everybody's in love with somebody who's dating somebody or something. Like you can still sort of get like the vibe, even if it's not a perfect like one-to-one correlation with how where your life is at.
Well, also Matt's is a lot more practical to it. He has he's a bit more maturity to it. He's not actually really trying to pine after. He knows it's a crush. He knows. He's not actually trying to break up his friend's relationship. Where
no, he's not.
Child would.
He's not a monster. He just is sort of stuck in this situation that's like, this sucks.
All right. But actually, wanted to move into your writing process.
Okay,
so
sure.
I remember you were mentioning in your video on your channel how that you don't plot out the entirety of your story, but not to the same degree as someone like Stephen King. When you are crafting your plot, did you bounce ideas off a writer's group, friends, or did you keep mostly the story in your head?
That's a great question. So I did model it after Stephen King a little bit. One of the reasons it took me a long time to finish this book was because or just write in general, was I was always paralyzed by the idea that I definitely am a make it up as you go kind of person. I love being in a corner and coming up with a solution to getting out of it and making it fit. But I'm not a planner necessarily. I am, but not like a hyper detailed one. And I felt like you're not allowed to write a book until you have like a 27 bullet point outline with indents, and I was like, I don't know. And Stephen King has the whole thing that's like, how I write a book is I ask an interesting question, I make up my characters, and then I let them do what the characters would do, and I see what happens. And I was like, oh, you can do that? So I took that and modified it a little bit because I knew there were like big points I wanted to hit. I was like, ideas that I'd had or things that I thought were cool. And so I kind of took those points, figured out how the characters connected to those, and then wrote towards them. I initially I had a couple close friends that I was showing like chapter by chapter as I wrote. But Stephen also, Stephen, we're on a first name basis. Mr. King,
Mr. King
also recommended that you don't let anybody read until you write the first draft because people's impressions will change how you're thinking about it. He was like, write a first draft and then give it to a couple close people and let them see, but don't let them like react to things because how they react is gonna like make you hesitate on things. And he's like, you have a picture, make it happen, do that. So after I read that book, I cut everybody off at about halfway through and was like, sorry, you can read it when it's done. And then I kept it all close to my chest. And it was a fun process. I think it was one of my favorite things that I learned about it is just the like trust in myself that I can figure it out. So being willing to just write a chapter. There are chapters that I sat down that I was like, I don't know what happens right now. And then I just started a conversation between, Alex and Matt or something. And then one of them just would say, would be like, this is what they would say right there. And I would be like, oh, and now we're going this way. Like that, of course, and a lot of times that felt really organic how that popped out. And so I learned to sort of trust, Stephen King's kind of like process a little bit and roll with it. And that's really how I got through it was that. And then once it was done, I showed it to people and had them give feedback and be like, does it make sense? Is it coherent? Do you have any idea what's going on? And modified it from there. But the initial draft, after about the first half, where like one or two people were like, "Yo, this is really fun. I'm enjoying this." So I was like, "Cool. All right, I'll show you when it's done."
Terrific. Yeah.
Did you send it to your just to your close friends, or did you have any like specific writers friends or your family? Who did you send it out to?
It was mostly close friends. I don't. That's actually probably been one of the harder things about getting started. And it's similar in YouTube too. Is I don't have a ton of writer friends. I went to a couple writers groups like after college and stuff, but I didn't find one where the people were that serious. It was usually people who enjoyed writing, but they weren't necessarily looking to make a career out of it. And I think I was a little too hungry for those groups, which is fine. You know what? You don't have to make writing your career. That's not what I'm saying. But just like in terms of what I was trying to do, didn't necessarily make me a good fit for them, and vice versa. So I have a lot of friends who are big readers, so I took it to them and got their feedback. But other than that, yeah, it was really just like people I trusted who I knew consumed a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, who I was like, hey, does this hold up if you read this book off the shelf? What would you think? And also, they're people I trust enough to be mean to me.
Good.
That is important.
That is very important. Did you find any of the characters that you wrote were inspired from your real life friends, like anyone from the side? Sorry, I mean the regulars.
Actually, there is one. He's towards the end of the book. Father Gerald is based off of a friend of mine, who actually was
cool.
a priest from Uganda who came to America, and I met him. And he has unfortunately passed away, but he was just an incredibly kind, generous man. And so he is definitely inspired by my friend. Other than that, not really. I mean, I'm sure there's like little things that I've pulled from friendships with people and stuff like that, but not particularly. Orion, I've always wanted to use Orion in a story of some sort. I've always thought that was just like a super interesting thing. So that's just like, I think I've plugged it into a couple other stories that haven't worked out before. And this one I was like, this is the one. This is where you're supposed to be going the whole time. So it just kind of
said something very important there, that you tried this in other stories. How many times did it take you to get a story, a chapter 1 where you were satisfied and went, this is the book. Boom, I'm finishing this book.
Oh gosh, a chapter 1? I wrote an entire novel that I threw away.
Wow.
And then I think I wrote 2 or 3 others that got to about at least a third. I don't know that I've ever stopped after a first chapter, though, to be fair. I think that I usually run, like, if I got to a point where I was like, I like this idea and I want to run with it. I think I usually got at least like a chunk of the way in before I got tired of it, or I thought it wasn't good enough and started over with something new.
What made you scrap that one book?
It just wasn't good enough. And it was a similar-ish idea. It mutated into this one. They're very different, but I pulled a lot of the ideas and figured out that they packaged better into this. But like the initial concept wasn't as good. Also, writing, just the more you do of it, the better you get. But I think in the beginning, it exponentially gets better. So I could tell a difference in my ability to write by the time I finished the Soul Fraud from the moment when I started, right? Because I had written over 100,000 words. Like, you just get better at it. And those first few books they were bad. You know, I wasn't as good a writer, wasn't as good a concept, but they were good, like, reps. So I just saw them as practice and said, okay, not good enough. Let's do it again.
Terrific. That's impressive, because we try to write books and we have the chapter 1 problem. So we're glad to hear you don't have that chapter 1 problem. That's the biggest hurdle. But we know that your chapter 2 was the toughest. You mentioned that after you got the chapter 1 finished, it seemed like it was tough to figure out, all right, what do we do now? I have the cool concept. Where do I bring these characters? Was that true?
Yeah, chapter 2 was one of the hardest chapters to write in Soul Fraud. Because, yeah, it was the same sort of thing. Like, it kind of came to me. So I got the idea from Soul Fraud because I used to work at a sales department where somebody did that. So I was a sales rep, and we had like this big meeting, and they were like, "Hey, somebody's been forging signatures on deals, and and all this fallout." And I think the guy went to jail. I don't even know. I didn't know him. He worked at another like place, but hearing that story, I was like, "Huh, wouldn't it be crazy if like a demon did that?" And then I was like, well, that's an idea. And that's where
you used to work with Dan the Demon.
I did, apparently, yeah. And that's, I think I used to have a corporate job, and so that's why I like a lot of the corporate jokes come from, is like, I think it's funny. But so I sat down and wrote that. I want to say like it was like Christmas Eve or something. I was just like, one of my end of the year fits of like, I need to, I've always wanted to write, like, let's do it. And I sat down and like banged it out, and I was like, huh, I like this. Okay, now what? And then I read Stephen King's book. I think that same Christmas I was given it, and I was like, okay, I guess I just do stuff. And the second chapter that there is now was not the original one that I wrote. It's one of the things that did get pulled. And I just wrote something, I wrote like a weird series of events happening, and it didn't make any sense. It didn't hold up. I think he met somebody on the street who could like read his mind and was like, yes, that did just happen to you. And he like went home just like panicking. And then I didn't really like it. I was like, this makes no sense. And so I ended up cutting it and rewriting it. But I think it was actually one of the last chapters I wrote was chapter 2.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Actually, it kind of made me want to ask, do you write chronologically, or do you write scenes out of order, then have to piece them back together?
I write mostly chronologically. So my first pass on the book, I follow the I find the chronological order helps me to follow like the path of what the characters would do, right? Because a lot of times in those moments, I know what they know too, right? Sometimes I know a little bit more, but sometimes I'm finding out with them. And so I feel like it's easier to accurately write their experience if I'm kind of in it with them. And then when I either hit a point where I'm stuck or I missed something, then I go back and fill that in. And I try to do those more or less chronologically as well. So like for right now, I'm almost done with the sequel, Dandelion Audit. And I'm at the part where I'm not writing concurrently anymore because I realized I left out like a story arc as I went through that I needed. And so now I'm going back and inserting that, but I'm inserting that chronologically where it would go, and then sort of massaging the parts around it to make sure that the characters are doing what they should be doing in those moments. But I've actually written up until almost the very end, and then I'll go back and finish the end once I finished all those parts.
Got it. Okay, so when...
And that's more out of order than... Soul Fraud was almost entirely chronological. There was like 2 chapters, I think, that weren't.
I'm definitely looking forward to...
Dandelion
Audit and see how that difference, how the transitions kind of work.
Yeah.
So, because definitely when you write chronologically, the transition from scene to scene is, I would say, probably harder than if you wrote most of the scenes and went back to fill in those, to make sure those transitions kind of really flow. I would imagine.
I think writing chronologically also makes it hard to get outside of like the moment. So I think like Soul Fraud, I was afraid to leave him alone for any period of time, right? Because so much was going on and whatever, and it was like, and I think that was probably one of the lessons I'm trying to learn with the second one to do a little better, is be like, it's okay if time passes. Like, we'll pop back in when something interesting happens, and like, it's okay if nothing interesting happens. So the pacing's a little different, and the problems are different. So I'm learning new tricks on this one, and we'll see if it works out. But I'm excited. I'm excited to get into people's hands and see. I'm almost done. I hit 90,000 words this morning, and I think it'll be a little longer than Soul Fraud, but Soul Fraud's about 110,000 words, so we're getting there.
Sweet. Same number of chapters, around 30?
Probably around 30. I think plus or minus like 5 maybe. But
okay.
We'll see. I am at that moment where I could still be surprised, because I'm sort of fleshing out a couple spots, and that's usually when I find that I have a moment that's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense unless this thing happens. And then you're like, oh, yeah, okay, gotta go write 2 more chapters. So, but at the moment, that's where I think it's gonna go.
Okay.
Terrific.
Well, I remember on your video, you talked about how dyslexia has affected your writing process, but Google Docs really and Word helps with all that. But what I think your fans probably want to know is how your writing was hindered by your weak knees.
God. You guys really just went through everything, huh? Well, fortunately, I usually write from a seating position, so that doesn't really
that
come
definitely
up.
helps. I'm wondering if you wrote from a standing desk or something.
No, I would never. I mean, I do have a standing desk, but no, I like to get comfy so I can just lock in.
I gotta mention as well, no insult to you whatsoever, but we saw at one point your fans were comparing you to Leonardo DiCaprio. What was that about? Can you, what was that?
That is actually just something that happens to me. I get stopped in the street my whole life and get told that I look like Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't particularly see it. I believe it's kind of it's like this part. It's like the forehead to the cheek portion.
Apparently
do see it.
Actually.
It's the eyebrows. It's the eyebrows and eyes. I think I can see it.
When you point out where I see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been, I mean, like, you wouldn't believe. I mean, I live in LA too, right? So it's a little ridiculous, just like the culture. But like one time I was in line at the TSA at LAX, and the woman in front of me turns around and she's like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I'm sure you get this all the time, but do you know that you look so much like Leonardo DiCaprio?" And I was like, "What?" And the woman behind me goes, "Thank you so much for saying something. I've been thinking it the whole time." Another time I was leaving a bar, I'd been telling my friends like the day before about like how this happens. And it's like, no, this doesn't happen. We're leaving the bar. The bouncer comes over and stops us and fist bumps me. And he's like this like 6'2", like probably like 300-pound linebacker-esque like black guy with this like deep voice. And he just walks over and he like fist bumps me and goes, "See you later, Mr. DiCaprio," and then just like walks by. And my friends were all like, "Did that just happen?" And I was like, "Welcome." Like, I don't know. So it's just been a bit that I get stopped on the street and people tell me I look like Leo. I don't. The bouncer made me feel very cool though, because I was like, yes, thank you.
Oh, you're probably riding that compliment.
Oh yeah.
It's, you get recognized third for being an author, second for a YouTuber, and number 1 DiCaprio, and also you were on that TV show. Third place, Legends of the Hidden Temple. Those are the 3 things.
That's the order. That's the order that it goes in, 100%.
Exactly. Actually, so Soul Fraud seems to be doing super well right now. Your fans are loving it. And let's talk about a hypothetical situation where Hollywood comes up to you and says, and gives you a certain dollar amount. How much would it cost you to sell your soul and give away the rights to your beloved book?
Dude, I don't even know. I mean, listen, times are tough. Everybody got to eat, right? So I truly don't even know what that stuff is like priced at. Fortunately, I have like a manager and people like that who tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Greedily, like one day I would love to be in film and TV type stuff. Honestly, number 1, I wouldn't want it to be a movie. I would want it to be a TV show.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I can't be convinced, but like in my perfect world, I I'm just a huge fan of the way that TV's gone with like the bigger stories. I think that movies have to condense so much, right? And especially with the amount of books that I have planned and things like that, I think like a season kind of thing would work better. Game of Thrones really did an excellent job up until the end of adapting a book and proved that like if you take the time and you really invest in it, you can. I don't know, you guys haven't read Dresden, I don't think, but I don't know if you ever saw it. Sci-Fi tried to do the Dresden series as a show.
Oh yeah. I know.
But they tried to do a book. Well, they tried to do a book an episode, and even once or twice combined a book, which is just I was like, no, thank you. Yeah, I remember watching it, and the casting was great. The guy that cast it as Dresden was fantastic, but it was like, did you guys just do like the major turning point, like the arc of like the first 9 books in like one episode as like a side? Yep, sure did. Okay. No. So, in my perfect ideal scenario, it would cost more money to get it as a movie than it would cost to get, like, if a high-budget TV show, like a Netflix or HBO or something like that was like, we want to do a big, big thing with it, but you need to take a hit so that we can afford to do 9 seasons or whatever. I'd be like, sweet.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You see shows like Netflix and like Stranger Things season 4. I don't know if you've watched that yet.
It's so good.
Killer.
Beautiful.
But I think that it just showed the benefit of streaming, where instead of you're stuck with that 45-minute TV show time slot, why not make it an hour 20?
Go for it.
Yeah, this episode needs to be a movie. Okay, sure. Perfect.
All right, why not?
Yeah,
that's definitely the benefit of streaming that I want to see
100%
more
agree.
of.
100% agree. So, my dream would be that it would go like that route, where maybe it is a movie, but that's because one of the episodes of the season needs to be a movie to set the stage or the finale or something. Great. But I would, I know with the scope of things that I have planned and the places that it's going to go, I think a movie would struggle to contain all of it. I don't know. Smarter people than I could probably figure it out, but.
Well, definitely a fun question.
Okay.
Which Hollywood actor, if money is no object, which Hollywood actor would you have play Matt? And would it be Leonardo DiCaprio?
I think he's a little old for Matt at this point.
Yeah.
A little.
Matt would be hard.
Software.
You know what I have thought before is I would do Idris Elba as Orion.
Oh, I love everything.
I see that. Idris Elba is just
you hit the target audience for Idris Elba.
Right? Yeah, 100%. Like that. That's the one in my head canon. I'm like, oh, that would be so sick.
Oh yeah.
Matt would be hard. I think Miles Teller could maybe do it.
He's definitely got that but he's not. He doesn't have that like Tom Holland youthful just attractive look where Yeah. I don't know. I think he would fit. He would fit.
He
more
feels like a guy,
run-down
right?
character.
Yeah. But I don't. Ryan Reynolds would be the dream, but he's also a bit old. But there needs to be I haven't seen somebody yet that I really was like, yes, the perfect young, snarky, self-deprecating kind of humor, but somebody in that vibe for sure. Okay. I think Miles Teller could be a maybe, especially after I loved him in Top Gun too. I thought he did great in there, and also I don't know if you guys have seen Whiplash, but Whiplash is
I love
that movie.
I love that.
One of my favorite movies. Yep. So I think that could be fun. Who I have a harder time casting is Alex, actually, because I don't know. I haven't come up with a good person for it. If you guys have ideas, I'd love to hear them, but I don't have a good one. I
see Alex as he's the best friend role, and I mean I would think you'd have to get Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, true.
Friend. I don't know. I just kind of feel that, but I mean
or
a little
Jonah
older.
Hill.
Jonah Hill would, but he's too funny. Jonah Hill, he steals.
Yeah, he does. Although Alex is sneaky funny, in my opinion. He doesn't say as much out loud as Matt, because Matt's narrating the whole time. But I think Alex is sneaky funny. In my head, Alex is the funny one. And I think in Matt's head, Alex is the funny one. Because he doesn't really notice his own. That's just how he thinks.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, also something I wanted to think about. I know it's not a movie, but it'd be more of a television show. But Stan Lee is famous for making cameo appearances in all the Marvel movies before he passed.
Yes.
How would you want to cameo in Soul Fraud, the TV show?
Yes.
What a great question. I think I would love to be locked in the lab.
Oh, that's a great spot.
That's a great one.
That is.
Do just pan past all the creatures in Lazarus's basement.
That's a great spot.
Oh, that would honestly be hilarious. We see all these monsters, and then you just see some guy in a hat.
Yeah, just like hanging out. That feels very
that
Dark
guy.
Towery to me. Like, you know how Stephen King just like inserts himself, but we have the writer locked in this room. But
That's a
I think that would be very
idea.
fun.
Oh yeah.
Oh, incredibly fun. And so Soul Fraud has been a huge success with your fans, having good reads, like a 4.9 almost, and the reviews are awesome. Like you mentioned earlier, the parent and the kid who gave you that awesome review. It's been so the support's been so great. Does this affect you at all when you've been writing book 2, and now that you're toward the end of it? Does this affect your mentality going in of, oh, I have a bigger hurdle and there's more pressure on me, or does that not affect you and you're just cool and collected?
I don't think that the response has affected me. I think that if anything, it's made me feel a little better, because I was a little nervous with it being slightly older audience. Not much. My audience that exists on YouTube is kind of all over the place, but there's definitely like a section that's younger. And so I was a little worried just that like some people would be upset, that it was like a little bit more serious, a little bit different. I was just like, I hope it resonates. And it clearly has. So that makes me feel good, just like on like the big scale. I would say I am nervous in general, because I know I have to, I want every book I write to be better than the last one and be, bigger and more interesting and not feel like a repetition of the same. So Dandelion Audit's definitely more ambitious than Soul Fraud was. So I think I just feel the pressure to make sure that I juggle all the plates in it appropriately. I don't want it to feel like kind of, you ride the railroad and then it's over. And I want, one of the things that I did in Soul Fraud, I personally hate it when I feel like a character is making an obvious bad decision just because the story needs it, right? When a character that you're supposed to respect obviously becomes an idiot for the sake of the plot, that really upsets me. So even though Matt makes a lot of bad decisions in Soul Fraud, I wanted it to always seem like a reasonable assumption for what he did, but that sent him on a lot of rabbit trails. So I'm trying to juggle more things, but still have the room for the rabbit trails.
To
see how it
that,
goes.
why you think it's so ambitious? Is Dandelion Audit going to have multiple POVs, or is it still going to be mostly Matt?
No, it'll always be Matt. I don't like. Let me get up on my little soapbox here. I don't really like when first person narration switches away. Like I find appealing about the first person narration the model of the inaccurate narrator, or not necessarily inaccurate, but like what he knows. That's like what's appealing. What's interesting is like you get to insert yourself into the story. You get to go along for the ride. The moment you zoom out and go to something that he can't know or he's not there for, I feel like it disconnects you from it. So I don't plan on ever leaving his perspective, so that you're making the decisions along with him and kind of following his thought process, not going like, no, dude, no, like obviously. And some others do it, and sometimes it works. I think there's a book right now that's really doing well. Is it Gunmetal Gods? That's the one. I'm pretty sure that's written in dual first person. And it's pretty interesting because you get like the inner thoughts of two different characters. I enjoyed the book, but I wouldn't necessarily. I can't see myself doing it. I don't think I would be able to turn off Matt's narration in somebody else's head.
Gotcha.
Right, and especially that first person POV that you prefer over a third person where it seems kind of alien. Have you ever toyed around with talking in the present versus past in your book? Did you? What set the tone for what tense you chose?
I struggle with that one a lot, actually.
Okay.
I went with past because I wanted it to feel a little bit more conversational, rather than. I felt like that felt a little more mature than sometimes like being present is like tricky. I think I'm still finding like the sweet moment in that, because I think there are moments where when Matt's talking, my editor and I actually argued about this a lot, and it was probably one of the things, because I am a little fluid with my tense, but sometimes when he's talking about an idea, even if what has happened is in the past, he's describing it compared to something else, I consider that to be a present explanation, because it's an opinion he still holds, right? Regardless of whether or not they're occurring at the same time. Yeah. So I want you to feel like he is telling you what's going on. And so I end up kind of bleeding a little bit, right? I don't think that in the story he is actively, in a fight punching somebody that moment, but he might be telling you something that he thinks, which he might still be thinking. And so that gets a little fuzzy. But I don't want it all to be in the past tense too, because then I feel like it starts to feel a little flat. One of the things I'm trying to critique of myself is I think I wrote a few things too passive, too slow, and so I'm trying to make it feel more present and active as it goes to be more engaging. That's just like a personal writing critique that I'm working on for myself.
I definitely think my favorite scene in the book was fighting the Minotaur.
Concur.
That was really exciting. Like, that was definitely not passive.
No.
Good. I'm glad. that was another idea that was recycled from my other book that I have wanted to do for forever. It was just the idea of being lost in a maze of cubicles with a Minotaur chasing you. Amused me immensely, and so I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Great choice. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned before how your fan's mother gave you a really great compliment about the book. On the flip side, I really enjoy reading the 1-star reviews of like The Lord of the Rings and these really great books for a good laugh. What, if any, has been the funniest complaint about your book?
Yeah, I do that too. I read all the reviews just because I'm curious and I like punishment. I have not seen. I think there's only one 1-star review that's written out anywhere, and it's kind of incoherent. So I didn't really take it too seriously.
I didn't mean it. I swear. I was just trying to do.
I knew it was you. Nah, I think it said something that was like, this didn't read like a book. It felt more like a series of interconnected vague ideas, and I was like. I think there's a lot of criticism you could level at this book. I don't think that's the one, but sure.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
And I was like, did you read the same book? I don't,
right.
Think what you want to think. It's a free country, but I was like, I don't know if that's really the one you can get me on.
I can definitely give you this comment. There is a beginning, middle, and end.
It was
Right,
definitely
that's there. That occurs. We start somewhere and we end up somewhere else. And so I was like, I think the thing that's most interesting to me is people who leave glowing reviews and then give it 4 stars, because I don't understand.
Yeah.
There's quite a few reviews that are incredibly positive. I love this. This was so much fun. I can't wait to read the next one. 4 stars. I'm like, what? Okay.
Actually, that gets into our big thing with our show, and the reason why we created it is because of our rating system. Because we were bugged by Rotten Tomatoes and Goodreads, how that's just the 1 through 5 stars. And we hated it.
So we do, if you see a rating from us, it's 7.38 repeating. We like to get really particular, get it on the dot. And
we actually have 5 categories.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Kind of like the Audible reviews?
Yeah, in a similar way.
I like the Audible reviews a lot.
Oh, yeah. Where we go emotional impact, characters, plot, dialogue/prose, and then for books, world building, for movies, cinematography. And then we average those together to make the final score.
Wait, do I get to find out my score?
Oh, yeah. We'll actually don't have the official one all zeroed out yet. It takes us a while to rate some stuff, but we'll talk about that after the interview.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can't wait. I want to know what my score is. I want to know what grade I get.
Oh yeah. and also, if you ever. Now, Richie, you mentioned earlier there was a beginning, middle, and end, which reminded me of a lot of the quotes you put on the back of Soul Fraud, where you just have, "I'm proud of you, Mom," or "Neat, some girl at a party." That's just such a great addition to the book. I love that part. It's very.
Do you guys want to know a funny secret about that?
Please, yes.
That was definitely, I said that there were a lot of things I wasn't prepared for that I learned along the way, and one of them was when I got a book cover made. They're like, cool, what do you want the back to look like? I started looking around at other, kind of books in the genre, that kind of thing. And it was all of them had reviews. And we were a month away from publishing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have any way to get reviews. I guess I'll just make some up. And that was, I wrote those in 5 minutes.
No, she didn't say "neat at a party." I was hoping that.
It definitely happened. But I was just and the one from my grandfather is 100% real. That one is 100. When he heard I was writing a book, my grandfather was just the driest old man, and he was like, "Huh, I didn't even know you could read." So I was like, you know what, Grandpa, you don't understand the book.
So what you're telling me is your mom is not proud of you.
Well, that one's up in the air. I never know. We'll find out one day.
Awesome. And I wanted to throw this out here because, focus of this has been on Soul Fraud, but just one little snippet on movie talk for a second.
Oh, sure.
We know you mentioned that Matrix is your favorite movie. Can you defend this? Because we love Matrix, but we love giving our top 10 lists, and hearing Matrix as one of your favorite movies is interesting. It's a great pick.
Can I defend this? Does it need defending?
Yeah. No,
I mean, it's fun.
you could just say I love it and that's it. But
The favorite movie.
yeah.
It beats out Citizen Kane. It beats out 12 Angry Men. It beats out the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, beats out all those.
I think that the reason that I put it at number 1 is that it's pretty close to a perfect movie. There's not a lot of things that I would go in and cut or change or tweak, even if I could. And I think that for me especially, I like when pulp is elevated to do something more than just be fun, but still doesn't lose the fun. The Matrix is technically a very complicated philosophical exploration of reality and existentialism and, savior complexes and all that kind of thing wrapped into what was at the time a revolution of action. Nobody had ever done action like that before. So not only did they take, the 90s was like the birth, well, I guess really the end of the 90s, early 2000s was the birth of like, what if we explored big ideas while blowing stuff up, which is a great concept. But like the twist, the best twist movies that we've ever gotten, well, not ever, but in the last while come out from that era, right? Shyamalan was running around, The Matrix, Fight Club, stuff like that. And that was, I think The Matrix is the pinnacle of that, where they really were like, we're not just using the action as a vehicle, it's important, and so we're going to elevate it while also writing something that's intelligent, clever, has a twist, resonates and stands on its own, has its own message and its own thing that it's dealing with, but also you've never seen anything like this before. And I think before that, people they were doing one or the other. And so the fusion is, to me, what makes it one of the greatest movies of all time. My personal favorite.
That's a great defense.
That is a great pitch. You should be on here. You should take his spot.
We do not defend our movies that well.
I also think John Wick is up there for similar stylistic reasons, like as a successor. John Wick has one of my favorite written scenes of all time. And it was actually, something you guys were talking to me about in DMs when we were talking about stuff. I think they have one of the greatest examples of show don't tell that's ever been written.
Yes.
When the Russian mobster calls the car guy, and he says, "I heard you struck my son," and he goes, "Yes, sir, I did." And he goes, "Well, why would you do that?" And he says, "Because he killed John Wick's dog and stole his car." And the Russian mobster goes, "Oh," and hangs up the phone. I think I went to see John Wick like without knowing anything about it. I was like, "Oh, Keanu in an action movie, sure, Friday night, whatever. That sounds fun." That happened, and I like sat up in my chair. I was like, "Hold on." I was like, is this a real movie? Like, what just happened? I think that is like one of the coolest exponential writing moments that I've ever seen. And it's one I think about a lot when I'm trying to like write stuff, is like that kind of thing. I love those moments. And I think that anyway, John Wick also up there.
Oh, it's full of those. Personally, one of my favorites for world building wise, it explains a lot of the plot holes you would think, where John is, killing all these people in his house. Spoiler alert for an action movie.
I think if you didn't know that one was coming, yeah.
All right. And the cop comes to his door and knocks.
Yes.
And the cop sees it and is like, "You working, John?" He goes, "I'm still retired." He's like, "Okay." And the cop leaves. And so okay, the cops are kind of in on this. This is like, there's a reason why John isn't caught. There's a reason why he can, drop all these bodies and the police aren't surrounding his house. And so I love, and that's not an explanation. It's just a little quick scene.
Yeah. They're like, no, everybody doesn't want to get in his way. You think you know what's going on? Nobody wants to be in his way. And you're like, oh, that more than the fact that he just killed like 5 people without breaking a sweat. Like, no, they don't want to mess with him.
Yeah.
Every dangerous person you meet is like, oh, John Wick, hello, big respect. Hi, can I get you some water? Like, that kind of stuff. I think that, because a lot of the team that made John Wick is the team that made The Matrix. I think that they pioneered like that kind of presentation, and I'm a huge fan of how that works.
I have to ask you, because the mixture of John Wick action and The Matrix existentialism, Did you watch Everything Everywhere All at Once this year?
I have not yet. I know.
Oh, my
I know. I've
goodness.
been so busy. I haven't watched any movies. I know.
I think you'll have a new favorite movie. I'm not trying to push it, but
Okay.
you have to watch that
Here's
movie.
the thing: people who are watching our show know that like during that time, I was a little bit more critical of it, and people think that I really disliked the movie. I really loved the movie. It was really good. I just didn't like it as much as
Right.
Austin. So,
No,
but it's a must.
all my friends.
Must
Okay,
movie.
yes. It's on the top of my list. I will get to it. I'm actually, this is another tangent, but we're here. I'm watching season 4 of Westworld right now.
How's that?
It's so good.
Okay. I
don't-
stopped after season 1. I guess I got to continue. Oh.
Well,
I'm so far
I'll be
behind.
honest. I felt like season 2 and 3 kind of lost its way a little. And then season 4, I just started, but I'm hooked. So I don't. And what's weird is I've seen a bunch of tweets talking about it, but like they're not promoting it anymore. They're kind of just like letting it do its thing. But it's super weird, and I don't know where it's going, but I'm enjoying it a lot. So,
Awesome.
Dark Twisted Mind of Jonathan Nolan,
Fantastic. I mean, to finish things off here, do you have any movie recommendation you think we haven't watched yet that you'd ask, or a book recommendation? Dresden. I know that you've mentioned that, so we should.
Dresden?
I
It's
can't
on my
recommend
list.
Dresden enough. I can't recommend
Okay.
Dresden enough. I'll say the thing that I say to everybody, and this is like common knowledge, right? Dresden is super inspiring to me on a personal level because book 1 of the Dresden Files, the story goes that Jim wrote it in like a novel writing class in college. And I believe he actually said he wrote it to spite his teacher because his teacher was giving him like the formulas, the this, that, the other. This is how you write a book. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to write a book following your thing and show you that it's stupid and I don't need to do it. He finished the book and his teacher was like, yo, I think this is a book, right? And so he sold it and then was off to the races. Book 2 is awful. You don't need to read it. I believe he has apologized for it.
He's apologized.
It's like it is the ultimate sophomore book, right? Like it is the ultimate like here we are. How did this happen? Everybody is like, nope, don't read it. You don't need to.
Wow.
Wow.
Book 3 is fun. And then book 4 is like the moment where it kind of zooms out a little bit. And it's like, by the way, here's the tune we've been dancing to. And then you're off to the races. And you're like, oh my God, what? And boom. And then I think it's book 12 and book 14 are 2 of my favorite fantasy books of all time. And I've read them many, many times. I think they're incredible. Can't recommend them enough. But that's kind of cheating because everybody recommends Dresden. My recommendation right now, my new like top 3 thing that I'm super psyched about that I've been shilling to everyone is Empire of Silence by Christopher, I believe it's Ruocchio. I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
No, not at all.
No, I haven't
that's a
heard of that
great
one.
recommendation because we have not heard of that.
So it is, it's a little bit of Name of the Wind in the space. But he's already got 4 books out in the last 4 years, so that's fun.
That's an improvement.
Right. But the premise is essentially, it's called the Sun Eater series. And it is
That I have heard of.
Okay. Yeah. Human Empire
heard the name.
spans the galaxy, right? And a little bit like Dune-esque, where there's like technology's kind of outlawed, except for like very rudimentary stuff. And there's been a lot of genetic manipulation. People live a lot longer. We finally made contact with an alien race, but they are warlike and terrible and cannibalistic. Well, not cannibal, but like, they're eating us and taking over. And this young man rises from being like a minor noble to like the hero of the war. But he's also the villain of the war because, and this isn't a spoiler, this is like, this from the very beginning. In the final conflict between the aliens and human forces, he blew up a sun, wiping out the entire alien invasion, but also like a inhabited human system. So he killed like billions to finish them off. And that's why they call him the Sun Eater.
Ooh,
And it's his origin story from boy to man, becoming like this minor noble up to the person making this call in this battle.
Wow.
And it's very slow, but it's also really good prose. The guy who wrote it's like super educated, so it's a lot of like references to like myths and legends and some fun linguistic stuff and things like that. And then it starts slow, but like it goes somewhere. The third book is like holds the record of it made me physically cheer out loud when like a scene finally happened. And and I don't do that for very many books. So for me, very near and dear to my heart, but you have to be willing to like go for it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you have to get invested into it because he definitely is like one of those like journey slice of life until we're there kind of thing. But I love it. I can't wait for the fifth one's coming out. I think he's actually releasing 2 books this year. So the fifth one comes out later this year. The third one has been my favorite so far, but they've all been fun. And I've been recommending it to everybody. It's absolutely in my top 3 right now.
Great.
Fantastic.
I'll try and read it after Joe Abercrombie.
Okay.
I mean, going through the First Law trilogy.
First Law is a lot of fun. Joe's great. I mean, I don't always read a lot of grimdark, but Joe is probably the king of grimdark, I would say. He's incredible. His political commentary is lovely at the same time.
Well, awesome. Yeah, thank you for the recommendations. And I'm going to say something that sounds a little ridiculous, but would you, Andrew Sigils, like to promote anything to our 600 and something subscribers?
I would, though. Here's the thing. I would, because all of them read.
I'll give you the floor. I'll let you finish it off here. Anything
thing.
you want to say to them?
Actually, I just made this up. I'm just on the spot. So tell me if you don't want to do this. But would you guys like to give away some Audible codes to your viewers?
Certainly. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do
cool.
that.
Why don't we? I don't know. What do you guys think? Like 5? You guys want like? I got a bunch, so I can give you guys like 5 codes if you guys want to give away some copies of Soul Fraud on Audible. By all means.
Perfect.
However you want to do that.
We'll have them in the description below the video.
They'll be on the screen in the description. There you go.
First one to use it gets it, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
First
think
5,
they're just
right?
one-time consumables. Yeah. So there'll be 5. I can send them to you. No worries. And I guess they'll be U.S. only because I can't generate. I don't know. Audible's stupid that way. But yeah, so they'll be U.S. only. But or you have to use .com basically.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, Soul Fraud's available on Amazon on Kindle Unlimited, so you can read it for free. Paperback, hardback, and Audible.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a blast.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Later.
Later.